Hello, my friends. I'm Dr. Tracy Lewis. Welcome to Victory Over Grief. This is going to be an exciting moment in your life. Trust me, your life will never be the same. You will have victory over grief. Well, here we are, friends. You have made it to the very first session of Victory Over Grief. We're going to look at a number of things today. Victory over grief. First of all, you need to realize that we're about to take a process. What is a process? A process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular goal. Our goal is to be free from pain, and we have to take a process, a set of steps and actions to get there. Grief is a very neglected process. It's a misunderstood process. And so when we lose something, understand this, when you lose something, a process begins. Now, if that process is neglected or misunderstood, then the action process that's necessary to take will not take place on its own. Many times, we aren't really sure what to do when loss takes place in our life, what particular end we want to reach. We often believe that falsehood, that if we grieve and we take those necessary steps to move on in our life, that we're being insensitive, especially when it comes to losing a loved one. That if we hold on somehow to this pain, that it's a way of showing we love the person. But that really is a fallacy, and it's a falsehood that even the person you lost wouldn't want you to go through. We may know that we want to be free from pain that's the loss's cause, and we want it to go away. We may feel like we need to wrap our head around what took place and navigate through the process to become stable and happy again. But there's one piece of our stability that often gets put on the back burner when the crisis takes place and it's neglected. And that one thing is our emotional health, our emotional well-being, and our ability to find a way to say goodbye to the pain that we've experienced. Due to the natural course of many issues that loss brings, that part of us that makes us whole, happy, stable, and able to move into our next chapter of life is hindered. In this outreach, in this session, and in the sessions to come, we're going to be taking you through this action process needed to move into a healthy manner through most of all death due to our recent pandemic, but also through other losses, and even death carries along with it loss. Loss of a home, loss of a job, divorce, bankruptcy, our loss of health, financial changes, moving, addiction, hope, trust, confidence, and many others. We will explain to you just what grief really is and what grief is not. We'll make sure that you do not get stuck on a page, or what I'd like to call it, arrested development, whether it's emotionally, whether it's physically, whether it's psychologically and mentally. We don't want you to get stuck on a page in your life because of grief and caused by grief. One thing we must realize is that loss is natural, and oftentimes it's involuntary. Perhaps your loss was totally out of your control and against your will. You weren't expecting anything. A family member was completely healthy, and then all of a sudden they went to the doctor, and 3 days later they were gone. A week later they were gone, and they were vibrant and healthy just weeks before. Perhaps you went home one day only to find out that your spouse had vacated the premises, taken all the furniture, and you were left alone with a note on the table saying, "I want a divorce." Involuntary, but it happened. Loss came to your home. Perhaps you came home one day and someone came to your door and knocked at the door to tell you that your loved one had been in a serious accident and that they didn't survive. Perhaps you got an email from someone in your company that said, "You've been a great employee for us, but we no longer are in need of your services." Loss happens to all of us. Sometimes it's voluntary because of poor choices that we've made. But then other times it's involuntary, as I explained. Perhaps your loss was totally out of your control and against your will. It wasn't something you planned for. It left you shattered. It left you blindsided, hopeless as to how to get back and live again. Or the loss in your life was due to your own inaction or your poor decisions, and you're not only ridden with pain, but you're also ridden with regret and anger, self-loathing that leads to so many other issues. In whatever way your loss came, nonetheless, it's lost. And if we will take time to examine it and cause the pain of it to be removed, life can get a lot better. Think of this example. Say that you were out in your yard and you were cutting your lawn and something happened to the mower and a blade flew off and it gashed you in the leg and cut your leg wide open. So you went inside and it was bleeding and you washed it and you put a towel on it and you just put your leg up and said, "Well, it'll get better." Well, probably that was not the case. You probably said, "I need to go to the hospital. I need to get some stitches." Then you went over to the hospital and you got stitches. They put bandages on it. They put some medication on it to prevent you from infection. They might have even given you an injection to prevent infection. So if you would do that for a gash in your leg, you wouldn't ignore it because it's so evident, right? You wouldn't just leave it there for it to heal on its own. You would tend to it so that it would heal as quickly as possible. And because we don't know how to bandage or heal or medicate or stitch up the pain of loss, we leave it untended and it begins to fester and it causes severe problems in our life, which we're going to talk about in one of our sessions, and how to remove those things as well. But if you can deal with the loss before it takes an inward root, before it's left exposed to bring infection, if you'll deal and tend with that grief immediately, you know, a lot of times people tell people it's too soon, and we're going to go into that. But if you'll just deal with it immediately, and so that it can heal as quickly as possible, your life will be 100% better. I'm so excited that you made it to this safe place today. And we're going to discover together that path of wholeness and that place of freedom from pain that you're experiencing right now. I can't even begin to imagine the pain that you're suffering from, no matter what you are. If you came on here, if you signed up for this, that means that your pain must be pretty deep. Because people who just have a little bit of pain and just think they can handle it wouldn't take the time to register. So I acknowledge today that your pain's pretty deep and your grief's pretty rigorous, and you're really experiencing some things, and I can't even begin to imagine what you might be feeling. But you know what you're feeling, and you know what you're experiencing. This pain can show up in so many different ways, and grief can show up in so many different ways. It can show up in your loss of appetite, your loss of sleep, your loss of ability to engage with other people, your inability to have any fun, pleasure. It might show up in sadness and isolation, crying spells, even anger, your inability to think clearly or make decisions, My friend, if you're going through any of those feelings, any of those types of behaviors, you're dealing with grief and you're suffering from loss. And even though you've endured painful changes in your circumstances of your life, I've got good news for you. We're going to share with you the actions you can take to regain that sense of well-being. I know I keep saying it over and over, but I want you to build your hope. And I want you to understand that this is real. There is hope for a future, and there is hope to be happy again. This past particular 12 months in history has brought an insurmountable amount of loss that we never planned for, never thought about in advance. Life was just moving along, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, came a global pandemic, the coronavirus, of which our recent president has said that may even add up to over 600,000 deaths. I'm going to show you a graphic of some of the statistics. We all know that there are currently infected patients, there are people who've survived it, there are people who didn't survive. It's serious, and it's critical. And that pandemic has added compounded losses in the lives of people who already hadn't addressed the losses they already had before it came. Before I talk about the losses from COVID-19, I first want to address today what other losses have already happened prior to this pandemic hitting the planet. Loss. What does it look like? Name some of your losses that you've experienced that have caused you grief. Just take a minute, think about it. Do you know there's over 40 losses that people experience in their lifetime? Think of some of the losses that you've gone through. Maybe you lost a pet after many years in your home. Maybe your children moved away and took the grandchildren with them, and you're experiencing loss because they're just not around. Maybe you were enrolled in college and you failed your last exam and they told you you can't come again, you're suspended until you improve your studies. Maybe you had a car repossessed, couldn't make the payments. Maybe you've lost a job. Maybe you've graduated from high school. Yeah, even graduating from high school can be a loss. Graduating from college can be a loss because you had a familiar pattern of doing things every day, meeting your friends, doing different things, thought you'd see them the rest of your life, and now you haven't heard from any of them. You don't see any of them. Maybe your loss is addiction. You're clean, sober, in recovery, but you lost that familiar pattern of how you did different things every day and how you sustained your life, maintained your life, coped with your problems. So you're suffering loss because you don't know how to cope with new problems. You don't know how to live clean and sober. That actually can become grief to you. Maybe you have a close friend who has suffered an illness and they can't go out and do things with you anymore, and you don't really want to look for a new friend, but you don't really know how to navigate through life differently without your friend at your side doing things with you. You see, loss can come in so many ways. Maybe you've lost a home. Maybe it was a family home. Maybe you lost your parents and you're dealing with probate court and you don't even know how to navigate through it, let alone grieve the loss of your parents. Yeah, there's a lot of different grief. Maybe you've gotten some charges and you're about to go to prison and you're facing leaving everyone and your children are going to be taken into state custody. There's real loss out there, and you might be experiencing things that people wouldn't even believe if you told them. Maybe you saved all your money for something that was really important to you, and after you got it, somebody came and stole it from you. You had a thief come in your house and rob you. Yeah, that's another kind of loss. So I just want you to think about the different experiences that you've had. Maybe you lost your virginity because someone raped you. Maybe you lost your virginity because somebody molested you. Maybe you've lost your ability to feel safe because of that rape. Maybe you've lost your ability to feel secure and trusting anybody. You don't want to go anywhere and you're isolating yourself in your house because you just don't know what to say or what to do or how to act. That's real loss, my friend. Yeah. We go through lots of losses. We go through things that we never thought possible. I mentioned before, divorce. Maybe you were glad that you got a divorce because you got out of an abusive relationship or you weren't happy in the marriage. But now you're suffering grief and loss because the natural routine of saying hello and goodbye and fixing dinner and sitting down at the table and going to the movies and all the different things you experienced together, even though you weren't happy, you're still feeling lost. Because now you have to figure out where your direction in life is going to go. And will you be alone the rest of your life, or will you remarry? How are your children going to handle everything? How are you going to navigate through visitation or allowing your spouse to visit the children? What are you going to have to do to make things right? Loss. Maybe you committed adultery and your wife or your husband found out about it, and you don't know where things lie, and the person that you were with isn't with you either. You're suffering loss, regardless of the situation, regardless of the circumstance. Maybe you had an overdose and you ended up having a stroke, and now you're physically unable to move about. Maybe you had a heart attack, open heart surgery, hip surgery that didn't work. Maybe you have a health issue where you had your leg or a limb amputated, and your whole quality of life has changed and your whole ability to navigate through life. Maybe you're in a wheelchair that you didn't anticipate, from a diagnosis that you didn't anticipate. Maybe you've suffered cancer and you've gone through a mastectomy, and you're suffering from loss of the things that you desire to have and desire to be a part of, and you can't go out and you've got to protect yourself. Maybe you're suffering from an immune deficiency. There's so many different things that could be happening in your life. Maybe you had a child, and that child was autistic or has Asperger's or has some other kind of disability, and now all the energy and things that you used to do in life for either your other children or for your spouse or with your friends, you have to give all that attention to this child. And you love your child, but you're feeling loss of the other things that you had to give up because of it. You see what I mean? That's what loss looks like. These things didn't happen in your life in just 1 week, or it might not have happened last week. Maybe they did. They could have happened when you were a child. Maybe your parents' divorce is your greatest loss, because you lost your home, you lost your family, you lost your relatives, you lost your playmates, you moved to another city, you lost everything. You lost the security of your home life. Some of your siblings went to live with your mom, you went to live with your dad. You are suffering loss from something that happened to you when you were 10 years old and you're 50. Yeah, that's loss. Maybe you were molested by someone in your childhood, but you never told anybody, or you told people and they didn't protect you. But whatever the situation, the loss that you went through, the shame that you went through, the fear that you went through is still there because you never told anybody and you never dealt with it. It's loss. Something could have happened to you when you were a teenager. Maybe you went through a situation or an event that was very traumatic in your life. Maybe you saw something. Maybe you were exposed to something in your younger years that brought about fear and shame and guilt and separation and isolation. Loss, my friend, is real. I want you to write some of those losses down. As I've been speaking, maybe you thought, oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, I'm on my third marriage. Yeah, I know what loss is all about. Oh yeah, I haven't got to see my children in 3 years. I know what loss is all about. Yeah, I've been unemployed and I haven't been able to find another job in my career. I know what loss is about. I want you to write a list just for a couple minutes. Take out a piece of paper or mentally, but I'd really like you to take out a pad and paper so that you can really see before your eyes some of the losses that you have experienced. They're real. They're real. And ask yourself, have I ever really talked about it? Have I ever really dealt with it? Wow, I didn't know that all those things in my life were adding up so much. You know, you could have had a car, it broke down, lost your job, lost your home, lost your marriage, lost your mother. You could have lost all those things, one right after another. Did you deal with any of them? Did you talk about any of them? Or did you just get back up and keep it moving? When we get together in our recap this week, we're going to talk about and share with one another some of the losses we've experienced. So understand that loss is also a process. It's an action process that took place that caused you to lose something precious to you. It might be just the ring that your grandmother gave you when you were 13 and you lost it. And there's no way to replace that. Maybe your house caught on fire and all of your family photos and all of your memorable things are gone. Loss is individualized just as much as grief. We all have it. We all have losses. You see, whether you realize it or not, we all have different personal relationships with the things and the people that causes the impact for each person to have a unique and personalized situation with grief. What do I mean by that? Well, I could have lost something and you could have lost the same thing, but we don't feel the same about it. I say, oh, it's just a thing. You say, oh, it's the most important thing in my life. It could be something so simple, even as your cell phone. You use your cell phone occasionally, you call a few people a day, and you lose your phone while you're on the subway. I use my phone nonstop all day long. I play games on it. I do different things. I do my TikTok. I share with my Facebook. I do all kinds of different things on my phone, and I have all of my connection with everybody by the phone, and I lose my phone on the subway. Now, one of us is going to have a whole different experience than the other about the loss of that phone. Have you ever seen anybody just kind of go ballistic when they lose something? And you're thinking, oh my gosh, what is your problem? Well, they have a unique relationship with whatever they lost. You might have lost your mother, and someone else might have lost their mother. The one person had a very ostracized relationship with their mother and hadn't talked to them in 10 years. But you spoke to your mother 3 times a day. And she came over for dinner on Fridays. And you went out shopping and did things together. And she was very active in your children's lives. Do you think they'd have the same amount of pain? No, because everyone's relationship with loss is unique. And everyone's relationship with what they lost is unique. I can't tell you how to feel because I don't have the relationship with whatever you lost that you do. Your loss is real, and so are your feelings about that loss. Sometimes we have a hard time expressing our feelings. We have a hard time sharing more than I'm happy, I'm sad. We're going to help you take that process and begin to come into connection with your feelings and understand them. One of the many reasons that many people do not grieve openly is due to this reason. We're in a society that tells us we're not to show emotion. We're not to make other people feel uncomfortable. Other people tell us how to feel and how not to feel. And they try to equate their loss with our loss. Yet they didn't have the same relationship with what we lost. I hope that makes sense to you. Let me go over that a minute. So Part of the reason we don't share our grief and we don't share how we're feeling is we feel like everybody wants to just ask us a question but doesn't really want the true answer. And they just want us to say, I'm okay, I'm fine. But if we say, I'm not good, I'm not okay, oh my gosh, people become like, what am I supposed to do now? I wasn't expecting them to say that. I was expecting them to say, I'm good, I'm fine, or pray for me. But they say, I don't even know if I want to live. I can't get out of bed. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Now what are you going to do? So a lot of times we ignore one another's loss and we ignore one another's feelings because we don't know what to do with them. And we're going to talk about that. Or we try and tell people how to fix it. You can't fix my loss and I can't fix yours. But we can journey through it together and help one another heal. We can't just put everyone's loss in the same pot and throw it away. In order for wholeness to reappear in our lives, we've got to take those pieces that we lost and examine them carefully, process them, acknowledge them, share them with others before we'll be able to remove them. These unremoved pieces can cause a chain reaction from grief of any number of other issues if left unaddressed. And we're going to discuss that more later. What is overwhelming and an overwhelming loss to you may be nothing to me and very insignificant. But that doesn't mean what you're feeling shouldn't be acknowledged. So what are some of the losses you've experienced? I named some, but let me just name a few more. Death, your home, divorce, the impact it has on your children, impact it has on extended family, siblings, friends, and other couples. The family structure system is gone. Addiction, bankruptcy, loss of a job, loss of health, loss of possessions, loss of animals, loss of peace or hope, loss of trust, loss of your health. Maybe you moved. How could moving be a loss? Well, you might have moved from a big house to a little hotel room, for one, or you could have moved to a nice place and a new place, but you're missing the old familiar ways of doing everything, the coffee shop you used to stop at, the people you used to visit. You moved away from family. So sometimes a move can also be a time that's happy and at the same time something I suffer grief from. Starting and finishing a new school, changing schools, change of jobs, marriage. Marriage can be grievous? Yes, because you used to do things when you were single that you can't do or don't do anymore now that you're married. And even though you're happy married, you miss some of those things and some of those friends. So marriage can also, you can even experience from a happy experience like marriage, graduation, retirement is another huge one. Maybe you worked at a company for 20 or 30 years and then you just had a nice little party, you had a retirement, and now you don't have anything to do with your day. You don't get up, you feel lifeless, you don't have friends and people to engage with, you've lost your sense of purpose, so you're grieving over your retirement. Financial changes. Maybe you went from a small salary to a large salary, and all your relationships have changed, and you're missing what it was like when people knew you didn't have anything. That would be the great one, right? Or your finances have changed and you're suffering. Maybe you found yourself in a situation where you're having to cut back on a lot of things. And I mean, there's been times in my life when I've been just eating 2 items and had to just make it on those 2 items because I couldn't afford to buy groceries. So financial changes can also cause grief and loss. We can miss the pleasures of life. Major health changes, holidays. Holidays can be very difficult for people. When someone who you loved had passed away, you weren't able to have them at those events and they were a special part of that event. You could go through holidays in that you don't feel comfortable in those settings and around other people, and you have memories that come up from childhood, memories that come up from situations and past holidays. And holidays bring grief to you. Legal issues, having to go to court, having the thoughts of going to jail or incarceration, or who knows what legal issue you might have. Maybe it's a lawsuit, maybe it's something that you're trying to apply for Social Security. All those things can cause a loss. Here's another one, an empty nest. Maybe you raise your children and you've had a wonderful life with your kids. They're off, they got married, they're moved away, they're going to different places, and you're just so used to having the family together, and you don't get to have your Saturday outings, you don't get to do different things, your child doesn't call as much as they used to, you don't have the fellowship that you once had, and you're experiencing an empty nest, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate through the next phase of your life. You can suffer grief from that. Sexual assault. Lots of things can be lost through sexual assault. Physical assault. Your self-esteem, your self-worth, your value, your ability to come and go, your trust, and your feeling of security and safety. Your own self-esteem and self-worth is heightened and damaged. Your physical capacity and things that you've gone through. Maybe you're not able to have personal relationships because of that assault. It traumatizes you to become intimate. That's grief, right? A breakup of a relationship. Maybe you dated someone for some time and things just didn't work out, and you got in an argument and they called it quits, or you called it quits. And even though you knew it was the right thing to do, or maybe you wanted the relationship to continue, but you can suffer grief from that. You can suffer loss from that. And I shared this before, your parents' divorce. You know, there's so many different kinds of grief, so many different kinds of loss. Now, those are the ones that you had before the pandemic. Then on top of all those losses, and if you wrote 3 down, you've got significant loss, but most of you probably wrote 6 or 7 down as I was sharing those. Wow, we have a lot of loss to deal with, don't we? And then comes the pandemic. Now we have multiple deaths of friends, family members. We can't have funerals, proper funerals. We can't have proper burials. We have to do things in ways that we didn't anticipate. Offices are closed. We can't navigate through business situations. We can't gather together with family. We can't share the loss together with those we love, but on the phone. We're quarantined. We're not able to come and go as we used to. Unemployment, layoffs, resources that we used to navigate through to get assistance and help are closed down. We're not able to function in them. We don't have our community rallying together, people doing things with one another. Community events have been canceled. No soccer, no football, no baseball, no city block parties, no large gatherings, no weddings, no funerals. The normalization of life has been stolen. It's been lost in a moment. Churches, ability to fellowship, ability to worship with your friends, ability to gather in their homes for Bible study, dinners and fellowship, sports, activities, and socialization has been so far removed, and a tremendous amount of society has suffered loss from that. No control over your environment, or living in a controlled environment instead of one that was more carefree. Isolation, trying to find a place. The pace of society is changed and altered. The ability to engage with others and purchase items, and everything's moving into new ways of doing things and new patterns and new systems, and you're just overwhelmed with all of it and feeling and suffering loss from what was familiar to you, from the patterns you always did, and you're trying to set up new patterns, but it doesn't take away the loss from the patterns that you've done for years and years. Hope for the future and void of fear. So much fear in our culture and our society now. Control over other people's movement, feeling controlled by the government, feeling controlled by your employer, feeling controlled by your family. Stores availability, supplies being limited, patterns and ways of doing things that you've done for years. You're commuting to work, now you're working at home, and that was just like your peaceful, quiet time, or that was a strenuous thing, but you still enjoyed getting out of your house. Now you're trapped in your house with your family 24/7. Elderly people left alone. You haven't been able to visit your friends in the nursing homes or in care homes. Your child with the disability hasn't even been able to get a visit from you in 6 months. The doctor not being able to be accessible, isolated, disconnected from your fellow man. Freedom, just freedom. Our ability to move and do and go and being forced to comply to different requirements so that we can move about, but not freely. People who are incarcerated have been cut off from their families, inability to communicate, to know how they are and if they're okay. Same as in hospitals and in the nursing homes. Loved ones are cut off, literally cut off. You saw them one weekend, you haven't been able to see them for 6 months. Health being compromised due to the lack of proper environments. Living in fear that you might receive a sickness or a disease. Even regular exercise has been altered and changed. Social interaction and activities. And I have not named them all. We have been through some loss. Wow. That's a lot of information to store. I hope it's helped you to see that grief is real, that pain is real, and that loss is real. And today, I want to finish this time together with you, answering a question. Just what is grief? Grief is the pain that is suffered from a significant emotional loss. We will talk more about the aspect of emotional health further in these groups. But you have suffered an internal injury. And today, you've taken some action by engaging in this gathering that's going to begin to lead you to the end of your pain, to recovery, and to victory. You'll find that it's going to take some courageous effort on your part. I mean, it was courageous of you to sit and listen. And some of you are weeping by the things that I shared. You're really in pain right now. And I can feel that pain even sitting here making this video for you. I can feel that pain. And that's why I'm here. I'm here because you need help. I'm here because you're isolated and you don't know who to talk to, and everybody around you's going through loss too, so everybody's just trying to keep their own head above the water. I'm here because I care. I'm here because you matter. I'm here because you have purpose and you have value, and I want to help you to get free from that pain. Dealing with loss and completing your relationship with pain is going to take your attention, open-mindedness, an ability to learn something new, and a willingness to be part of a solution, your own solution, and then the solution of others, by completing this action process that is necessary for yourself to heal. Grief is an expression of instinctive and typical feelings to the loss. It's an expression of instinctive, internal, and typical, normal feelings to the loss. It's also it consists of a mixture of opposing feelings that we experience. By the completion of someone's life, maybe your grandmother died during this situation, and that's your loss. And you know, she was 86 years old, and and she lived a good life, and you're happy that she's in a better place, and you're happy that she's glad to be with Jesus and she ran a race, but you're sad that you don't get to see her every Sunday. You're sad that you don't get to call her on the phone and check on her. You're sad because she brought so much joy and peace to your life, and she seemed to understand you like nobody else could. It's also consisting of these mixture of opposing feelings that we experience by the completion of someone in someone's life. Grief is also the end of things, and it's a change in a familiar pattern or design of life and the daily habits and behaviors. Like I was explaining about calling your grandmother. You can't do it anymore. She's not going to answer. So that pattern that you had, that familiarness that you had of going out to eat with her on Sundays and calling her on the phone through the week, it's ended, and there's a change in your familiar pattern. This means that we experience both positive and negative feelings at the same time, and it causes us to be all jammed up. If you're joining me today, it's probably safe to say that if you're listening to this program today, that your heart in some way has been broken, and you might not know how to repair it. And it's also necessary for me to tell you how I feel. I feel like this. I don't know at all how you really feel. You already know that. It's not necessary for me to tell you how you feel, because you know how you feel. What you don't know is how to feel better, how to feel free, how to be at peace again, how to navigate through the things that you're feeling right now, just to name a few. In our next session together, we're going to continue to unwrap this life issue we call grief and head toward the direction of victory over emotional pain that's presently holding you hostage, holding your heart and even your life hostage from moving forward. We're going to investigate different ideas that will help you get to your victory. What does victory mean? Victory means to forgive people who say or do things just because they have no idea or comprehension what you're going through and the fight that you're in. Victory means to feel empowered over your enemy grief and know how to feel better, to find a new meaning in your life, to be free from the fear of hurting again, and to be able to open your heart once more. Victory over grief means acknowledging your pain and knowing that it's okay to feel sad, and it's okay to talk about your feelings, no matter what other people think about it. Victory over grief is about empowering you to be able to obtain the ability to talk about your loss and to feel the pain and remorse and regret. Victory over grief is going to take a series of little and conscious efforts and choices on your part to make it possible. And in order to take those steps into victory, we need to be re-educated on how to discover and complete emotional pain caused in our lives by loss. I just want to acknowledge today that there are many of you out there who are in excruciating pain right now. But we're going to help you. And there is hope for you. And no matter what you've gone through, or no matter what you've experienced, whether it was your fault, whether it wasn't, whether it was something good but you still feel lost, whether it was the death of someone very dear to you or multiple deaths in this global pandemic. Maybe you didn't get to say goodbye to someone that really mattered to you. Right here, right now, you're going to begin to process that pain. Say goodbye to it. And hold on to it and cherish the memories that you have of the good things. and appreciate and value even the things you've lost, and turn your grief into victory. So this is the end of our session today. I hope that it's helped you to begin to understand why you're struggling, why you're in pain. I don't want you to stop there. I want you to get on our chat this week. We're going to be sending you an email and information on how to get into that thing. If you have any problems or questions, we'll have a number for you to call so that you can find out and figure out how to connect with us. And I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. I'm looking forward to being a part of your journey. I'm looking forward to meeting you right where you are and helping you find a way to say goodbye to pain and to remove those stones of pain in your life. As we talk today, you've probably noticed you got a lot to work with. There's a lot of issues, and there's a lot of things that you need to navigate through, and there's a lot of things you need to acknowledge, but we can do it together. So, will you take the journey with me? Do you want to have victory over the pain? Do you want to have victory over the loss? Do you want to be able to look at those things and remember again the good things? You know, when I said goodbye to the pain of the divorce that I went through with my parents as a child, I could begin to remember memories, happy memories that I had as a kid that I could never remember until I removed that pain. I could appreciate the family that I did have for the years that I had it. I could value my childhood, and I could experience joy from some of the things that I did that I couldn't remember until I dealt with the pain and the loss. I'm going to help you do just that. In this next few days before our chat, I want you to think on your losses. I want you to write a list of what some of them might be and be ready to share your experience with someone else and talk about something that you have gone through so that together, my friend, we can find victory over grief. God bless you. You'll be getting notification about our chat room and about our next video coming. And I'm so looking forward to meeting each and every one of you and getting to know you by name.